All right, welcome to Spoiler Talk, the Shadowbahn of episode.
Just let it loose, man. You can say anything you want here.
I think that, and to continue on with what I was saying earlier in the podcast, 50-60% of this book was dedicated straight up to music, and it's music that I didn't recognize, which really hurt it on my end, because I feel like I read this 300-page book and 150 pages of it might as well have been descriptions of the landscape for as much effect as it had on me, relating to the story. And some of that, again, maybe I don't even know which part was Bob Dylan. I just picked that out at random. But maybe if the heading was Bob Dylan, I'm being serious. And I said, oh, Bob Dylan. And I find out that Bob Dylan's mother was killed by a next door neighbor, and that had something to do with some song that he wrote or whatever. I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll even go listen to this fucking song. Because of the story that I read, but it was also fucking muddled, and you had to try to figure out how to decipher who these people were. That, in my opinion, as somebody who is not, I want to say a music historian, but I guess this was all very pop culture music. But it's pop culture music going back to the 20s, so you almost have to be a historian to be familiar with most of it, I would imagine.
There was no way that anybody besides Steve Erickson was gonna automatically recognize everything that was mentioned in this book.
Mm-hmm. I didn't care enough to look any of it up. Oh, by the way, that fucking O Shenandoah song, whatever the fuck that's called.
Yes.
I tried to listen to that. Holy shit, is that terrible? Are you familiar with it?
I'm not.
Oh my God. It is it would be what's that part in a movie called? The montage song for a really sad 1800s Western. That's the only way I could explain what that fucking song is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to have some sort of historical significance for America, because that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. What you would think. You would think if it had a historical, we would recognize it, right? It would be...
Yeah, but we're kind of ignorant people, when it comes to certain things. I've spent so little time, and I guess I shouldn't talk for you on this, but I've spent so little time caring about music that, I'm sure there's a lot of things that are significant that I don't know about.
Yeah, and that's fair. Oddly enough, and this had to be in the book, right? About Elvis only performing that once, or twice, live on stage somewhere. I couldn't have read that somewhere else, right?
Oh yeah, and it was only available as a bootleg or whatever.
Yeah. So, that being said, 50% of the book was completely lost on me. Now let's talk about the stuff that wasn't, or maybe shouldn't have been lost on me, and maybe still was. I think that the Jesse Presley story was fascinating, even though it makes absolutely no sense. He shows up in the fucking towers and knows he wasn't supposed to be born. Then he goes back and he's born. At the end, he shows back up at the towers, I guess as an old man, though, at that point. So maybe that part makes sense. He lives up to the time when he can go back to the towers because he knows they're there on such and such a date in the future. That was fascinating, seeing him interact with the Beatles and JFK and the effect that... Now I'm going to ask you, I kind of came to the conclusion later on in the book that Elvis, or lack of Elvis, is why the Beatles never became famous. It's why JFK didn't become president, that all those things are kind of supposed to be tied to Elvis. Is that the impression that you got?
Yeah, that's exactly... So that quote that I gave, the zeitgeist is missing a piece... Mm-hmm. The zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, was a lot of the story hinges on the idea that Elvis took, in his, and this is I guess a historical instance of cultural appropriation, but because Elvis brought black music to the white people in a time where we were still very racist, he kind of whiteified black culture. He changed the culture of America in a way that allowed for future things to happen, is the way that I saw it.
Okay. I thought that was fascinating because really it wound up being a story about It's a Wonderful Life without Elvis, but instead of Elvis just not being around, him having died in place of somebody else who was supposed to die.
Yeah.
So some of that was pretty fascinating. That being said, it got really muddied, and then Jesse really just wants to destroy all fucking music, or I didn't understand any of that shit either. Like the journey that he went on. I guess he hated music because he knew his brother was supposed to be really good at it, and he wasn't. Like I wasn't really clear on the rest of that.
That character's motivations are very strange because, like, the only way that he would be an interesting character is if you made it that he knew he was supposed to be dead and that his dead brother was supposed to be the person who made the world what it is now. So that he had that kind of bitterness toward, like, his own existence, I guess, in a way, or you know, bitterness. He did
know, though.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's the only way that he becomes an interesting character. Because, like, if he didn't know about this alternate, that he was basically the alternate reality where everything was shitty, like, he would just be some other dude. So, like, I don't really understand the mechanics of how time and realities and everything play into this, but, like, his character was basically structured around the idea of, like, hey, because I'm alive and Elvis isn't, the world is a terrible place, and that makes him angry. And because his brother was supposed to change the world through music, he has a vendetta against music.
You're right. The mechanics are part of the problem. So I thought it was fascinating that there are other characters that understood what happened, but there was really no explanation.
Right.
You know what I mean? As to why they knew.
But if you notice, and I don't know if this means anything, but the people who knew that Jesse was the cause of the problems were the people who would have had a vastly different level of celebrity had it been the other way around.
So who do we think the black guy at the end was? Because he's the one that rolls out the whole Elvis Presley kind of the cultural appropriation and stuff when he finally makes it. So maybe he's somebody too, and we just missed it. Like JFK, you made the Beatles, right? That was
made the Beatles, yep. Because there was at different points different Beatles, but John Lennon was the one that was the angriest.
Yeah. So some of that was fascinating, except for the fact that we don't really, again, that the mechanics not only weren't handed to us. There's really no even illusion as to how maybe this could have happened. So, as a weird time travel story, I think that, you know, with a little bit of work, this could have been a great alternate reality / time travel story, but it left. All it did was show us something happened, something off screen happened, and things are terrible with no like reconciliation to make things better. I mean, just nothing. You saw part of an alternate reality.
All right, so I have a quote that I want to do on this side of things because we're talking about JFK. Oh my God! So and I know you're moving on to another point, but this is just perfect for the timing. JFK was kind of a skeevy asshole in this book. Would you agree with me?
Yeah.
I love this quote. Can't you at least have some of this crazy poon here? He gestured at one of the naked women on the floor around him. Blow you while I watch so I can begin to grasp what it was all for.
I mean, the thing with JFK is, I guess this is a good way to circle back to what I was saying about understanding. I am going to pretend, based on the way the rest of this book is written, that maybe JFK had some health issues that were kept from the American people, that some of that stuff was true about his deteriorating health.
Right.
Because of like how everything was written about the musical artists and stuff. So I found some of that fascinating because I knew who he was. You know, I know that he was going through some things behind the scenes. I learned a little bit about him, and maybe I would have had an appreciation for Chuck Berry or Bruce Springsteen that I don't have had I have known that that's who some of those stories were about. I guess that's so the JFK character to me was fascinating and one of the better parts of this book because I could relate to that in that I know who he is and I learned some off the books in quotes kind of things.
That's fair. I hear you, and I'm on the fence about like because you know me, and anybody who's listened to this podcast long enough will know that I'm the type of person who likes a book that makes you work for it. So the fact that everything wasn't, you know, explicitly laid out for me, I thought was charming in a way. But most people don't agree with me on that. So I see where things would absolutely have been clearer if there was what's the word I'm looking for? A more explicit explanation of what was going on. But at the same time, I know 100% that that's not what Steve Erickson was going for. So, yeah, I agree with that. The book definitely had a very, very unique personality to it, and it's difficult to it becomes more art than literary in a way, like, because of the way that it's presented to itself. It's got a very unique and difficult style, and I think a lot of people, I'm sure Erickson fans will love it because it's got from what I understand, he's such an excellent writer, and that comes through. But like, the format is definitely challenging. It challenges you. It makes you work, and not a lot of people dig that.
I don't. I understand what you're saying, but like, what work could you have done? So, do you get what I'm saying?
Like, stop reading, go to the internet, look for, this is the name of the song, that's the author, and then like that's the songwriter, like, and tie things together, like, right. That's the kind of work I'm talking about. The
whole alternate history thing, though, couldn't be squared away with that.
No. Well,
the actual story, right?
No, you couldn't reconcile the story, but you could at least have a stronger idea of like you were saying earlier, like the black guy at the end, he was a significant person, but like, I don't know the name of that character because Correct. I don't know, but I could have stopped and I could have gone to the internet and taken the clues.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very, very true. I did that when I first got the inkling that this was Elvis Presley's brother.
Yeah, I did too. I went to the Wikipedia and I saw that he had a stillborn twin.
Yep. Other good things that maybe could have been explored better for me. The Zima's father has a list of songs that play off of one another, I guess is the only way to really say that, like twin songs, basically. Right. I thought that was kind of fascinating, although I recognized very few titles on the list. And I was hoping that would lead to another kind of cool storyline, like the Jesse Presley storyline. But really, it was just him keeping them and then them starting to disappear as Jesse was having his effect on the world, I'm guessing. So that looked like it was headed the right direction. I thought that, and I still think that to a certain extent for movies, that there have been times and when I say history, in the last 20 years, where movies have come out and then something has come off to either knock it off or be very much the same thing right around the same. Yeah.
Like Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yes, and there are a ton of movies that are just that same kind of thing. So I thought that was a thing. But now let's talk about this. Did you shit your pants when Jesse's former self ended up in the water tower?
Dude, seriously, when I was reading that, I can't tell you how satisfied I was because, like, that was... And the hotel had a different name, but it was the fucking Cecil Hotel that we talked about in our Halloween Spectacular.
When there is a line in there when they said he was last seen dashing into the elevator.
Yep.
And in my mind, I thought, oh, wouldn't that be fucked up if he ended up in the water tank? And sure enough, like 4 paragraphs later, they're like, he ended up in the water tank. And I was like, this is fucking great.
Dude, the moment that elevator line happened, chills. Total chills. Because I was like, I know where this is going.
I actually messaged Jesse about that when I read it. And I said, I'm 87% of the way into the book. And I finally understand why you thought we should read this. And then something. And then I said, dude, the elevator, water tank, hotel thing. And he said, that should make for fun podcast talk. And I said, it'll have to be in spoilers. Spoiled like Rob's underwear when he reads it.
Man, that assumes I was wearing underwear when I read this book.
Yeah, see, you just said that. And everyone's assuming you weren't.
I had to mess you up with that.
That was a nice little, again, alternate history, though, right?
Yeah.
Because that actually happened only in this book. And I was really unclear on that, too, because everybody was super sure that was Jesse that got into that elevator and then wound up dead. So I don't know what happened, if he split off again or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that one was a little bit unclear. Like, I don't know who ended up in the... But the thing that I think that was best about that was, like, the number of times that water pressure was brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
Yep.
I fucking knew. And every time water pressure came up, I was just like, oh God. It was awful.
I fear for you going into your bathroom and getting shitty water pressure at some point.
I know someone dead is somewhere nearby in the water supply.
Yep.
Yeah, that was good stuff. That was good stuff. I don't know. What else can we spoil?
I don't know. I mean, I think we covered all the important parts. It's just weird. I don't even understand. Like, I don't know. Oh, we didn't talk about fucking Zima that has music just fucking emanating from her for no real reason, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. That's one of those weird. I mean, it's not like there's. I guess the thing, I just took it because I'm like, there's enough unexplainable shit in here. Like if that was my sticking point, and it's like, oh, the towers showing up in the middle of the desert wasn't weird enough. But yeah, she just has, and then that they become a cultural phenomenon because the story takes place in some sort of like almost dystopian alternative reality where they're driving. We mentioned in the normal review that they're driving to visit, Michigan or whatever, but they're driving through parts of the country that have tried to secede from the nation, and so things are weird there. And then for some reason there's no music happening, and it probably has something to do with what Jesse's doing, going across the country, burning like record stores and stuff like that. So her emanating music from herself as they're driving through the country, there are towns. And to me, it was almost like there was a desert of music, like they hadn't had music in a long time, like a drought of music. And when these guys go through in their hybrid Camry, and music is coming from the car, it's like it's a huge phenomenon, and they become like a cultural phenomenon because of that, and they're reported about on the radio and stuff like that. But it's because there's some supernatural music coming out of her thing, which parallels the whole Twin Towers, makes you hear music inside, and yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that, right? Yeah, that there are parts of the United States that are no longer parts of the United States.
Yeah.
I will say though that I found
disunion.
Yeah, well, I have to imagine and then one of the quotes brought it up, so I'm guessing it does take place slightly in the future because it said been 2 decades since the towers went down, so I imagine it's 2021. Because I was also going to mention that Erickson wrote this pretty sure that there was going to be a woman president when this book was released. Because the one mention of the president says she, but I guess if it's in 2021, it's a little further into the future. So
hey, Hillary could take the next election, man. we were so sure on that one episode.
Yeah, I know. I don't think the Democrats would prop Hillary up for another run. If she couldn't beat Donald Trump, for fuck's sake, I think that she's done in politics.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say, there was, all right, so the creepy part with like the hotel water tower thing was one of the creepy parts in the book, but the other creepy part was like at the end of the book, and I don't know if you really paid much attention to this, but like the people who had been near the towers when they were in the Dakotas, like the music that they heard when they were by the towers, like came back to them in really like messed up, scary ways. I
may have missed what you're saying.
So like if I was one of the people who, was in the Badlands when the towers were there, at the end of the book, there was like an example of like maybe 2 or 3 different characters where either they or someone who they were with started singing the song that they heard when they were at the tower, but it was in this like unnatural way where like it was like almost like an infection, like the song wouldn't go away. Good. that messed me up for a second.
That happens. Sometimes songs get stuck in your head like that and they just won't go away.
But I'll give you an excuse on that one because I took forever to read this, and you probably finished this a long time ago, so it's probably not as fresh in your head. But I read that earlier today, so it's really fresh in my head. And to be clear, Livia's finished this book like a week ago, and we've been delaying the episode until I finish reading it because I've been occupied with other parts of my life.
What he's trying to say is he has more important things to do than read Steve Erickson novels.
I mean, I didn't want to say it that way.
But you know what? Going forward, I have more important things to do in my life, too. So.
Oh, wow. That's a spoiler right there.
Let's head back to do our wrap-ups. Hey, thanks for Patreon listeners for tuning in. Hopefully, we've been doing more of these. I think on a percentage basis, we've been doing more. And this one definitely had some stuff worth talking about. So thanks for contributing, and thanks for listening to Spoiler Talk. We'll see you soon.